Hello, and welcome to a very special edition of Up Close on METV. I'm Charles Clapsaddle, Station Manager for Manatee Educational Television. And it's my great pleasure to welcome today Joanne Hampton, who's going to talk about her story and why, in my opinion, she's an inspiration for those women out there who have breast cancer. Joanne, I can't thank you enough for joining us today, taking time out of your busy schedule to talk about your wonderful story and share that with our audiences.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Well, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? That accent is not a Florida accent, is it?
No, not at all. It's a New York accent. So I'm originally from New York, and about 8 years ago, we decided to move to Florida, and it's been wonderful.
And you've been here in the Sarasota-Bradenton area?
Yes, I've been in Sarasota for all 8 years.
Yeah. Well, one of the great things about you, and we met you during the Making Strides Against Breast Cancer walks that they've had at the polo field for many, many years. And you were very helpful and introduced us to so many people, and you had an opportunity to interview so many of people that you know that are in the breast cancer community. But I want to hear about your story, because it's so unique and it's so moving, and in and of itself, it's very inspirational. And you were diagnosed with breast cancer in what year?
In 2003.
But you had no idea that you were even, did you have any symptoms? Did you feel ill? Or how did you discover that you possibly might have breast cancer?
No, I didn't feel ill at all. It was one of those days where my 2-year-old son, who lives on my hip, was actually sleeping, and I said, oh, this is my opportunity to take a long hot shower without him banging on the shower doors. So I decided, I went in, and as I was removing my nightgown, with the back of my thumb, I felt a lump. And I thought, this is kind of strange, but the doctors assured me it's nothing. I was so young. It was probably just a fatty mass from having children. They did all the standard tests, even a biopsy. And then one Friday, rainy afternoon, I remember it clearly, my mom was visiting, my children were playing in the living room, and the receptionist called. And she said, the doctor would like to see you. And I thought, why? She explained that she had gotten my results and could I come in Monday morning. So it was a very long weekend.
I can imagine.
But I walked in Monday morning and I heard those 3 life-changing words: you have cancer. And he continued, it's very aggressive, and I remember hearing chemotherapy, oncologist, and I know I zoned out for quite some time. I could hear his, I could see his lips moving. I just didn't hear anything.
And I would suggest to you, Joanne, that, hearing that and being unsuspecting, it's so overwhelming, emotionally and physically. That's so overwhelming that, one is never prepared to hear those kind of words from a physician. So emotionally, it had to be a lot of turmoil for you to kind of understand what the scope of this was.
It was, I always try and explain that it wasn't one emotion that I was feeling at that moment, but every single one of them overwhelming me at one time.
Right.
And it was more like, I always, go back to that moment and remember that it wasn't even my life that was flashing before my eyes, it was that of my 2 children.
And again, what turmoil that you must have been going through. Now, let me ask you this. Here you are, a young woman, active and, raising 2 young children. I mean, were you kind of conscious or aware, of the factor of breast cancer being out there, or is this all kind of new to you?
Brand new. I didn't know anyone with breast cancer. At that time, we're going back 14 years, there were no pink ribbons. There was no information online. I knew nothing about breast cancer at that time, so it was a complete shock.
So with that self-discovery and going to the physician and your doctor giving you that terrible news, your journey kind of begins, through treatment and then recovery, and we're going to take you through that journey in a minute. But it's kind of overwhelming. Here you are trying to understand this and to get this kind of information so you can do the best for you. So when you were diagnosed with breast cancer, your physician said, this is an aggressive form of treatment that we're going to have. And how did that begin, and what were your treatments?
I started with chemotherapy, which is not pleasant. I was so sick. I was so weak, and I remember, my children understood that, even though mommy didn't look like mommy and mommy couldn't do all the things that other moms could do, this medicine was going to make her better.
Right.
So we did, chemotherapy, and as soon as that was over, I started radiation. The only great thing was Melissa had just started kindergarten. So it was me and my sweet Michael still on my hip, and every day for 6 weeks at the same time, we made that trip over for radiation. And he was adorable. He would sit there so quietly with his lollipop, and he would draw pictures for for all the different patients that were in there, and they so look forward to seeing him. Yeah. He really would brighten their day just by handing them a doodle from a 2-year-old. It was adorable.
And that had to be very comforting for you to have your son there,
Really was.
and how rewarding it was that, because your efforts to recover, you could see your 2-year-old sitting there, and you said, I want to go be the best I can for him. But I would imagine, and if you could share with us, as a young mother, 2 very young children, it had to be very difficult for you undergoing the effects of chemo and radiation and still be there as a mother and taking care and feeding and playing with your children. It takes its toll on you as well, I would imagine.
Oh, it did. It was even just emotionally knowing that I couldn't push them on the swing set. Was so difficult, But thank goodness neighbors, sent their children over, and I could at least watch them being pushed on the swing set, and that was very helpful. But like I said, it was more just not knowing if I was going to be there for them. Who loves their children more than the mom?
Yeah. And those thoughts in itself, even though that you probably had the best medical care and people who were very interested in your full recovery, those thoughts of like, what's next, what happens, what if this treatment doesn't work? Those kind of run through your mind whether you want them to or not.
Yes, it's a very dark place, very lonely place when you finally get to sit down and be alone with those thoughts. I do admit those are very dark days for me. But as soon as treatment was over, and that was what I focused on. I focused on not worrying, having fear and anxiety over what if this returns.
Right.
And that was one thing I really worked hard on, turning off so that I could be there for my children.
And I think that's important. That just shows your strength of character and the quality of what you wanted to bring to your life is to move forward. And I think that's an incredible thing. But one of the things that you've mentioned, you wrote this beautiful story about your life, and I wish you could share that with everybody. And I would encourage you to publish that if possible, because it's a wonderful feeling of inspiration that you share with people. But one of the things that you do mention, and you've talked about, is that there wasn't that widespread a support network that was there for you during this. Now, I think there's a wider spread, a sense of awareness, there's a sense of community with the breast cancer survivors out there. But during your period of time, what did you find for that network out there, for that support mechanism? Was there something there?
No. All those years ago, there was nothing there. And I always the one thing that got me at the most was it was almost as if it was a naughty word or a bad word, completely inappropriate to say that it was breast cancer. So I would refer to I had cancer, you know, when people would ask me. But there was no pink ribbons. Nobody knew anything about breast cancer. So there was no knocking at the doors, you know, people coming to visit. There was no dinners being delivered. People didn't know what to say because they knew nothing about it. I mean, I can't blame them. I didn't know anything more than what my doctors told me.
Right.
You know, I remember Googling, and it just basically said, blah, 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 and you may die. And that was the only information that I was able to obtain while I was going through treatment.
And I would say that, you know, that puts you at a tremendous disadvantage because, you know, when you're sick and you say, well, what about the other people? What are they doing? But with breast cancer, you know, 14, 15 years ago, you know, there wasn't that great sense of awareness that there is today. And it had to be kind of a lonely feeling to know that, you know, I've got my family and I've got my physicians, but I need more than that. I need something to help me support myself through this.
Exactly. And I didn't have that support, not at all. But I think that was, I mentioned that also, that it's, when I would go through a grocery store, once I did recover and I was, you know, finished with treatment, and I would see someone, you know, who's obviously going through treatment, they're, you know, not, you know, I would always stop. And I would approach that person, I would offer a hug, a smile, a few kind words, just because I would have wanted that.
Yeah.
It would have meant the world to me, instead of people looking upon me and looking at my children with pity, you know, not understanding what I was going through, or, you know, so that is something that I always, you know, did. I would always walk over to someone and, you know, and I'm a survivor, I've been there, you know, you can get through this, you know. And it was very fulfilling for me.
And I would say too that again shows you the quality of character and your attention to others. That was a big part of you, because you recognize those things, the hair and the head wrapped up with a bandana, or the being frail and weak and stuff like. If you would recognize those people, you would always outreach to them.
Oh, absolutely. I remember the one time I was going through the grocery store, I had seen a woman, and you know, it was obvious she was going through treatment. And as she approached me, I was surprised because it was a mom I knew. We had chaperoned the field trip to the zoo for the kids. And as she got closer, you know, we hugged, and she grabs my arm and looks at me and she says, "What now?" I mean, I could see the tears forming in her eyes, you know, and like, I'm supposed to have this magic words of wisdom, some special insight, and nothing. I had nothing to say. Because I had said the same
thing.
The same thing, and I was just as lost, and I was at a point where I forgot that how lost I was, but I had been there, and I looked at her and I was just, you know, I'm taking it one day at a time, you know.
And you know, I think, you know, one of the questions that comes to my mind, you know, is that, you know, women suffer. 1 in 8, I believe, is the figure, will suffer from breast cancer at some point. Why do you think there was such a lack of awareness, you know, in those early years when you were going through it? You don't think that, you know, the physicians or medical professionals, you know, realized how important it was to have a support mechanism in place for people who are undergoing this type of cancer?
I think a lot had to do it with age. So I think, unfortunately, back then, when I did finally get into a support group, I was, you know, I was like a 78-year-old in comparison to I was 33. You know, and I think a lot has with age. You know, like they weren't testing. There was the hereditary testing, so they didn't realize that it was impacting. And by the time that the women caught it at such a young age, it was already just too late.
Well, and I would, you know, tell our audiences, you know, that thanks to people like you, you know, in our community and people throughout the country nationally, is that, you know, the awareness of breast cancer has really grown, and it, you know, people now realize the importance of self-testing, annual mammograms, and all of the things. And perhaps 10, 15 years ago, that didn't exist. So thanks to people like you and throughout the country, that's changing and will continue to change. And that's a very important step.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, one of the things that I want you to talk about a little bit is that as you went through this journey and you came through and you regained your health and your family grew up, you become more aware that there was a need, not only within the community but throughout the country, of creating this more sense of awareness, and you became kind of actively involved in kind of outreach. And I'd like to hear a little bit about that and why it was so important to you and how you developed these support groups and how you networked to create more of a sense of awareness.
So it was very important to me. Like it was that woman in the grocery store really hit my heart because it reminded me of how happy Mikey made everyone with those pictures. So what I wanted to do that. I wanted to be there for other people on their journey. I wanted to answer those questions that I couldn't get answered. As silly as, chemo will make your mouth taste like metal, use a plastic fork. That really helps. There's such little things like that if they only knew, they would have been able to eat. So I started with making strides, just meeting other survivors. And it was wonderful because these survivors are my dearest and closest friends to this day. Sisters.
They're like sisters.
They're like sisters.
Sisterhood.
I can, and I just adore them. So I was so blessed to have them come into my life. And but with making strides, just meeting other survivors and people that were going through it, even people that had lost loved ones, and just offering that hug and being there for them. And just getting the community, a bunch of young women together that were all diagnosed and thought they were alone out there,
Right.
and getting together for coffee, getting together for dinner, and we all have children the same age, and you had so much to talk about, and how did you handle this situation?
Right.
And it's just been so rewarding.
And I think what you've done and others throughout the community, you built kind of a structure, and that structure was that network that people can say, well, what now? Well, let me tell you what now. You have something, you have support, you have people that you can talk to, we have tools that you can use, we have facilities that you can take advantage of. And I think that's all thanks to people like you trying to make a difference in it. And but it's a slow process. It's step by step. You want to grow and develop those relationships with people. But I think also one of the key things is, as you mentioned, is that being a survivor, you have a story to tell. You can share that with people. You become an inspiration to others, as all survivors do. And I think that's such a critical factor.
Oh, absolutely. The one of my closest girlfriends is also a breast cancer survivor. And when we would sit and talk, we would always go back with the different, if we would have known this, if we would have known this was out there, this is coming out. So actually, she put together a newsletter and online website, which is Breast Investigators. Taking the mystery out of breast cancer, that's what we call it.
I think it's important.
It is, and we gather as much information that we possibly can. We put it in one comprehensive place, easy to use, and if you do have a question,
You can access it.
You can access it. You can get your answer. And it's amazing because most of those questions were the same questions that I have.
Right.
And now I'm able to answer them for someone else. And it's just so very rewarding.
And I would think too, even when you can't answer them, you can point them in the direction of perhaps you need to talk to an oncologist, perhaps you need to talk to someone that can help you psychologically, or whatever the case may be. You can point them into a direction, and the resources that are now available for people.
So many.
Which I think is important, and the increased sense of awareness is so very important, because breast cancer it kind of cuts across all socioeconomic boundaries, age boundaries. You have young women, you have older women, you have middle-aged women who are undergoing this, and it's very important to have that information available so people can take advantage of it. And one of the key things too, and I know you've been very active on this as you create this awareness, is for people to get their annual mammograms and for people to do their self-examinations. And why do you think those two important factors are so important for women to be aware of?
Early detection is everything. You know, breast cancer does not have to be a death sentence. Early detection, you know, there's with treatment, you could live and, you know, and survive. So it's basically know your breasts. I always say, if something doesn't seem right, something's a little uncomfortable, your gut is just telling you something, go with your gut and follow up with your doctor.
Very important. And one of the things too is, you know, that the annual mammogram, which is important, which I understand is critical for women of all ages. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I know that there's so much back and forth with the proper age, but if there's any risk factors, you know, with the family, you know, get yourself in there earlier, express to your physician that you do have some history, an aunt, I mean, because you'd be so surprised that that is history for you, and get in there sooner and get that mammogram.
And I think that, you know, it's relatively easy for women to do that.
In today's world, with all the awareness with breast cancer hitting, you know, girls so young,
Yes.
that it you know, if you go in and ask that physician, it is easy to get that mammo.
And I think that's really important because, you know, as you mentioned, early detection is the key to that. So physicians now, with the advent of, you know, highly technical, you know, research tools that they have, if they detect it early, they can treat early. And perhaps, you know, the chemotherapy and the radiation that you had to endure, you know, maybe that's not right for them, but detection is key.
It is key. For survival, early detection is everything.
Well, one of the things also that, you know, you've been, you know, really involved with, and I want to take a few minutes to talk about it, is that the Making Strides walk that every year has taken place at the Polo Club in Lakewood Ranch. And this year they're changing the venue a little bit. They're making it a little different. It's going to be at Nathan Benderson Park. But you've been involved with this, and we have, you know, had the opportunity, the fortunate opportunity to tape this on many occasions, where you've been extraordinarily helpful interviewing people for us. The turnout for this is tremendous. You know, you have a large contingent of survivors of all ages that are there, but you also have teams and individuals who are showing their support for people with breast cancer. And there's just a tremendous outpouring of support. What do you think about this Making Strides Against Walk, and why is it so important for this community?
To see all those people out there and all that pink and all that, the pouring out of love and support is literally, it's overwhelming.
Yes, it is.
I've seen survivors standing on the sidelines almost in tears because just to see all these people come out to support what we've been through it's overwhelming. I love it. I love going. I think it's so important in the community because I think it encourage women to go for their mammograms.
Yeah.
I think it would show them that they're not alone if they are sitting alone. To see all these people come out to support you, I think it does wonders.
Well, and I would suggest too that, you know, you see a lot of team supports out there, you know, offices or law firms or hospital put together teams, and they come out there and they show their support, raises money for the American Cancer Society, which is a great thing. But also there's that sense of a real sense of community, that they're all together. And I think the numbers have been, you know, 13, 14, 15,000 people, and I think this year they're even expecting more at Nathan Benderson, which is an amazing thing, which is a tremendous outpouring of support from the community. Well, one of the other things that, you know, you've been involved with, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about this, is you specifically host a program, and I want you to tell us a little bit. It's called Jackets and Jeans, two of my favorite things. So, and tell us a little bit about this and what it is and how people can get involved.
So Jackets and Jeans is the kickoff party for the Cycle of Life through to the Team Tony Foundation. Tony had brain cancer. And when he was diagnosed, he also went through that he was alone through the entire process. And he felt that it would have been really nice if he had someone that was close to his age that he could have spoken to that had been through his experience. So he decided to start the Team Tony Foundation. And what he does is he trains volunteers that are also all survivors to go out and meet with newly diagnosed patients with the same type of cancer,
God
around the
bless
same
him.
age, where we can actually sit there and honestly say, I know what you're going through because I've been there. And it's just, for me, it's so rewarding because when I meet with a newly diagnosed woman, it's strange to think that I didn't even realize that there was invisible scars that I didn't really have healed yet until I meet with all these women. And
then
as
you
I
feel
help
that.
them, I'm actually helping myself. And it's just wonderful. And I make a new friend every time, so I enjoy
And
it.
I would say to you, knowing you, Joanne, and the effort and the sincerity and commitment that you have, I would just say that you help so many people by just sharing your experience and your outpouring of support. I'm sure it's such a positive reaction for the people that you talk to.
Absolutely.
So back to jackets and jeans, the
Back
cycle
in-
of life. And you're going to have this. It's coming up relatively soon, the middle of October 13th.
Yes.
And you're having it in Michael's on East. And this is your second annual.
This is our
and
second.
it's quite the event.
It is. It's wonderful. Like you said, it's at Michael's on East, and it is going to be amazing. So we're trying to raise the money for the year so that we can help with medical grants.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so we really try and help the patients with any of their expenses that they incur with going through treatment.
Which I think is important too, to kind of be able to have a supply of people that can go out and help others. And the event is Michael's on East, very fashionable, wonderful place to have things.
And you just have to wear jackets and jeans. So it's
Jackets
not too-
or jeans or both?
I would say both. Jackets and
So,
jeans.
so let me ask you this. So, I mean, you're a company, you're an organization, you're an individual, you want to attend and support the great cause that you started on this. So people can go to www.teamtony.org. Find out, and we have that information up on the screen right now. They can find out specifically about the event and buy tickets.
And buy tickets. We're going to have raffles, silent auction. We have a comedian. It's going to be wonderful.
Oh, so it's a fun night.
It's going to be a very fun night.
And it's a positive way too.
It
It's
is.
about something very serious that's really, required and necessary for our community. But it's a fun evening to
It's a
help
fun-
celebrate.
Absolutely. It's a fun evening, and it's so that we can, just so that no one has to go through this journey by themselves. And that's what Team Tony is all about, is that so no one fights this journey alone, that they have that one-on-one support.
Well, having, gone through this by yourself, basically, when you were diagnosed, you can see the positive nature of this, of being able to give back and pay it forward.
Exactly.
So you can continue to help others. So I would encourage everybody to try to attend this. Sounds like a great fun evening. It's a nice little kickoff. It's like a week or so before the actual walk itself.
Well, the ride is the very next day. Then they're the cyclists leave the next morning from Nathan Benderson, and they will ride all the way out to Sebring, spend the night, and they ride back.
Oh, very good.
And then we have, the celebration, a little celebration over at Benderson, and there's a walk for who can't ride. I'll be doing that. So that'll be fun and exciting.
Well, I would suggest to you, Joanne, that your continued efforts is remarkable. I mean, it really is. Your story is remarkable. You're a young mother, 2 small children, being diagnosed, having to undergo chemo and radiation, and come through this. And instead of being, I'm through with this, I'm going to move, you decided, not only do I want to do something for others, but I want to make it lasting, and I want to have some kind of legacy that we can continue to help people, because obviously that help wasn't there for you at the very beginning, and unfortunately that has happened, but you've really turned that around, and I think that your efforts are really truly inspirational. But one of the things I want to talk to you about basically is you're a young mother out there, maybe you've got a couple of kids, you've got a job, you're working, your life is kind of fast paced. how important, what is that message for women out there that you want people to know about the importance of breast cancer examinations?
It's the difference between life and death. You know, early detection is everything, but it's life and death. It's a huge difference. You know, there's milestones in life, and I was so grateful that I just saw my daughter off to college for her second year.
Congratulations.
Yes, my son Michael got his driver's license.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I got to see all these things, and I believe that everyone deserves to see all these things.
Right.
So it's so important, no matter how busy you are, you know, like I said, just be aware of your breast. Always go with your gut. A lot of women say, well, I'll get there next week. Oh, they can't fit me in. But if you feel something's not right, you know, that little feeling, get yourself to a doctor.
Well, there's wonderful physicians out there, too.
Absolutely.
There's wonderful physicians that are out there that are, you know, even if you have questions, I would say, you know, women should go and talk to their physician, even if they don't, you know, feel that they're, you know, have breast cancer. You get the answers beforehand so you know what you're looking for. And another key thing, too, is I think that women should know about is for young women. You know, I think that, you know, young women should be knowledgeable about what they need to do. You don't have to wait till you're in your 20s or your 30s or something, but you know, they should know, you know, about the importance of self-examination and their annual mammograms. Do you think, how young should women start looking?
You know, every time I go to these breast cancer conferences and stuff, and I meet all these women, I thought at 33, I was one of the youngest that I've ever met. And then I'm meeting 23, 28. They haven't even begun their lives, and they're being diagnosed with breast cancer. So it's really, you know, not only know your breast, but also your family history. You know, if there's an aunt, a mom, a grandma, you know, a cousin, actually, because I did have a cousin. So, and they're, you know, we're both with the same. If there's any of that, you really stay on top of it.
Right.
You know, but 23 years old.
That's very young, and it's very. And I think, you know, the more you create that sense of awareness for young women, you know, you kind of start something that can hand on to another generation. Every woman should be, you know, knowledgeable, and if they are not knowledgeable, find the knowledge, you know, to take care of themselves. It's so very important. And you know, we're kind of winding down a little bit, Joanne. I want to touch base on a couple of other things, and I think you started when you first started talking about that. When you're diagnosed with breast cancer, that confusion, that fog, that kind of lost in the headlights type of thing, it can't help but affect you. It can't help because, you know, you hear that word, and that word, that C word, all of a sudden kind of overwhelms everything in your life. And it takes a lot of strength to get through that. You listen to your physician, they say you're going to do this, and it all sounds, you know, probably a little bit like another foreign language that you don't really understand, but you kind of go through the paces. What is it that you want women to know how they can get through that if they're diagnosed with breast cancer? You did. You have strength of character. You got through your thing, but it was difficult. What do you want women to know? What are those insights that you can provide?
There's a lot of help out there now. There's a lot of nonprofits that are, you know, that offer different things. Look into that, you know, and it's as simple sometimes as if a neighbor or a friend is offering to help, don't let pride get in the way. Say yes, because it's so nice to get a home-cooked meal.
Right.
You know, if a girlfriend wants to come and take the kids for a couple hours so you can rest, let her do it. And if she wants to take you out of the house so you can go with her, you know, but definitely take advantage of, there's so many resources that's out there now. There's so many support groups. It might not be for you, but you might meet that one individual that will be your best friend for life.
Right.
And that one, you know, that you just connect on that one level. Take advantage of all these things, you know, and maybe step out of your comfort zone, and definitely.
And you don't have to carry it all on your own shoulders.
No, absolutely not. You know, say yes. You know, put pride aside. If they want to come clean, send them to my house too. But let them do it.
And you're just such an extraordinary young woman, to undergo this with two small children, and I would imagine too, as a mother, seeing your children, you're always thinking about them. What's going to happen to them if something happens to me?
Exactly. Well, I'll say, I think for me it was a little bit easier to remain strong, positive, because I had to for them.
Correct.
So even though it was difficult taking care of two children while I was going through everything, it was what kept me going.
Yeah.
So it was actually it was a positive in my life to have two little ones that I had to worry about not being there, because
Right.
they wouldn't be everything that they could be if they didn't have my love. And so that I was determined to not let them lose their mom.
And that's a good point, that your determination, your strength, and the ability to go through this, is a remarkable journey. And we're so happy that you're here today to share that with you. We only have a couple of minutes left, and if you had the opportunity to share one thing with women out there who may be facing breast cancer, or the importance of being self-examination, what's that message that you want to leave with people?
Not to be afraid to ask questions. Basically, they know their own bodies, and if they're not feeling right, but like I said, it doesn't have to be a death sentence. I am, breast cancer is a huge part of my life. It's made me who I am today. I'm a completely different person from the person who before diagnosis. I've embraced it. I've been blessed. It's actually been a wonderful, positive life since my diagnosis. And so it doesn't have to be a negative. I'm just
It's just something that happened.
It's something that happened and has made me better, stronger. I value different things. If there's dust in the corner, so it'll be there tomorrow.
So what?
I'm not worried
Yeah.
about it. And it's just wonderful.
Well, I would say to you, Joanne, first of all, I want to thank you for all the help that you've given METV over the years, hosting a couple of programs and, doing interviews for us. You're just a joy to work with. And specifically today, for sharing your story, it's not only one of courage and determination, but it's also one of inspiration. And I would say to audience people out there, young or old, your story is unique. Your message of hope, is certainly something for people to be encouraged if they're going through that. The figures don't lie. It's 1 in 8 women will suffer some kind of breast cancer, and that's the facts. So your inspirational, courageous story is really unique, and I want to thank you for sharing that with us. And not only that, but we want to mention your efforts throughout these communities, Sarasota and Manatee, to bring greater awareness. And it's so important that you continue your work, because you are truly an inspiration.
Thank you.
And I want to tell people one more time,
Team Tony.
2nd annual Jackets and Jeans Cycle of Life launch party, Michael's on East, October the 13th.
Friday the 13th. Can't
Beautiful facility. It's going to be a fun thing. And the results of what you do for this event help those people with cancer.
Yes.
It provides people to go and talk to others, provides information and outreach and that community support, which is so important.
Medical grants and everything, so we
It's
really
so
help.
important, and
And it stays local in our community.
and again, how important is that for
Absolutely.
people who are undergoing chemo or radiation or whatever medical issue that they have, that are facing cancer? Team Tony is there to help. And you're to be congratulated on that. That's a wonderful thing. It's not as if you don't have enough to do. So you undertook this, to continue to pay it forward and to give back. And Joanne, I can't tell you how lucky we are to have you share this with us. And we look forward to working with you on other events too.
Yes.
Next time we're out at the Making Strides, we'll give you a microphone. You can continue to do interviews for us.
Absolutely.
Joanne, thank you. And thank you
you
for sharing your story with us. And thank you for joining us on this special edition of Up Close on METV. Joanne is a really unique individual. She came through a very tough time. Breast cancer will affect 1 in 8 women. It might be your mother, your wife, your sister, your aunt. We can't stress enough the importance of self-exams and your yearly mammograms. If you want to find out more information, call up the American Cancer Society and find out how you can help prevent this. Thank you for joining us, and a special thanks to Joanne for joining us. We'll see you next time on Up Close on METV.